There is something I have watched the modern world chase for decades now, and I want to speak to you honestly about it today. People spend thousands of dollars on supplements, on longevity protocols, on cold plunges and red light therapy, and laboratory manufactured compounds they cannot even pronounce, all in pursuit of the one thing that the Jewish sages already documented in extraordinary detail more than 2,000 years ago. I am talking about long life. Not just long life. I am talking about a sharp mind, a strong body, and a heart still full of joy at 100 years of age. I have seen this with my own eyes. I have sat with men and women in my community who have crossed into their 10th decade and still rise before the sun, still pray, still cook, still laugh with grandchildren. And when I ask them what they eat in the morning, the answer is almost always the same. My name is Rabbi Shlomo Katz. I am 71 years old, and I was born in Tzfat, Safed, in northern Israel, the city that is the ancient capital of Kabbalah, where the air itself seems to carry the weight of centuries of sacred study. I studied at the Yeshiva of Tzfat and at Barley University, and for 43 years I have devoted my life to one question. What does the Torah, the Talmud, and the Zohar actually teach us about the foods we put in our bodies? Not as metaphor, not as poetry, as a living, practical system that the Jewish people preserved through exile, through tragedy, through everything the modern world has tried to replace it with. My teacher was my grandfather, Reb Yosef Katz, a master Kabbalist of the Tzfat school, and it was he who first sat me down as a young boy and told me that every food God placed in this world carries a code, a spiritual signature, and that this code, when understood and honored, can bring healing, protection, and blessing into a home. Today, I want to share with you one of the 7 sacred foods that form the foundation of what I call the complete system, the Shivat HaMinim, the 7 fruits of Israel, named in Deuteronomy 8:8. After 43 years of study, I have identified these 7 foods as the divine blueprint of the Jewish kitchen, and today I am teaching you one of them specifically in the context of what the Talmud says about longevity. Toward the end of this teaching, I will share something my grandfather revealed to me that I have shared only within family until now, a specific morning practice connected to this food that he learned from his own teacher in the old city of Tzfat. Please stay with me until the end. I want to tell you how this knowledge came to me, because I think it matters that you understand where it originates. I grew up in Tzfat, and if you have ever walked the narrow stone streets of that city, you know they do not feel like streets so much as corridors between worlds. The buildings are old. The light is different there, golden, heavy, full of something you cannot name. My grandfather's kitchen was on the 2nd floor of a building that had stood for more than 300 years. And on Friday afternoons, as the Shabbat, the holy day of rest, was approaching, the smell that came from that kitchen was unlike anything I have ever encountered elsewhere in my life. I was perhaps 8 years old the first time my grandfather placed a small clay bowl in front of me before our morning prayers. In the bowl was olive oil, not the pale, almost flavorless olive oil you find in most grocery stores today, but a dark green, almost luminous oil that his neighbor pressed from trees growing on the slopes above the city. He told me in Hebrew, which I will translate for you. Shlomo, this is the food of the anointed ones. The kings were anointed with it. The menorah burned with it. And the men who lived the longest always began their morning with it. I asked him where he learned this. He said the Talmud. He said the Zohar. He said his own teacher, and his teacher before him, going back in an unbroken line to the great sages of Tzfat. This is not the kind of knowledge you find easily. It is not posted on health blogs. It is not trending on social media. The rabbis of the mainstream do not teach it from the pulpit, because much of it was preserved in texts that require years of study to even access, let alone understand. The oral traditions that surround these texts, the commentary, the practice, the lived experience, were transmitted from master to student, from grandfather to grandchild, across generations. I was lucky. I had a grandfather who understood this, who guarded it, and who chose to teach it to me. Today I am choosing to teach it to you. If you have ever felt that your home needed more blessing, that your body deserved something more than what the modern world is offering it, write the words Shivat HaMinim in the comments below. Those are the 7 sacred foods. I want to know how many of you have heard this phrase before, because most people have not, and that absence is itself something that needs to be corrected. Now, I want to speak honestly about something, because I think you deserve honesty and not flattery. The longevity crisis we are facing today is real. The numbers are shocking. According to data published in recent years, the rates of cognitive decline in adults over 60 are accelerating in the Western world. Alzheimer's and related dementias now affect 1 in 9 Americans over 65. Despite spending more on health care than any nation in history, Americans are not living healthier. They are living longer on paper, while experiencing more years of disease, confusion, and suffering. In the last 5 years alone, there has been a documented decline in what researchers call health span. Not lifespan, but the number of years a person actually lives in good health. More years alive, fewer years truly living. The modern response to this has been more medication, more supplementation, more interventions, and I am not dismissing all of that. But I want to ask you something. Who are the people living to 100 with their minds intact? Who are the people still walking, still praying, still preparing food for their families at 102, 105? When you look carefully at the research on so-called blue zones, the areas of the world with the highest concentration of centenarians, the Mediterranean, and specifically the communities of the Middle East and North Africa that preserved ancient Jewish and Semitic food traditions, those communities appear again and again. And the common thread is not a pill. It is not a protocol. It is a relationship with specific foods, practiced consistently, with intention, beginning in the morning. I ignored this for a time. I want to be honest with you. When I moved to the United States 30 years ago, I went through a period, I'm not proud of this, where I became enamored with the American approach to health. I started eating convenience foods. I let go of the morning rituals my grandfather had taught me. I told myself I was too busy, that these were old customs, that the modern world had better answers. Within a few years, I felt it. My energy declined. My concentration became fragmented. I developed inflammation that my doctors told me was simply aging. And then my grandfather became very ill, and I went back to Tzfat to be with him. And sitting in that kitchen again, watching him prepare the same bowl he had prepared for me 40 years earlier, I understood what I had abandoned. When I returned to this practice, when I came back to this food every single morning with the intention my grandfather had taught me, the change was not immediate, but it was undeniable. What I discovered in that process is that this is not a single piece of advice you can isolate. It is part of a system. It is one of the 7 sacred foods, and when you understand how they work together, everything changes. The food I am teaching today is the olive. Specifically, the practice of consuming extra virgin olive oil, what the Torah calls shemen zayit, the oil of the olive tree, first thing in the morning before you eat anything else. This is one of the Shivat HaMinim, the 7 species of Deuteronomy 8:8, where the Torah describes the land of Israel as a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. 7 foods. 7 dimensions of divine blessing built into the landscape of the Holy Land. Today, I am teaching you the olive, and specifically the olive oil, in the context of what the Talmud teaches about its power to extend and strengthen life. The Talmud is not a mystical text in the way most people imagine mystical texts. It is extraordinarily practical. It is a record of thousands of years of accumulated observation, argument, and wisdom. And in the Tractate Horiot, page 13, side B, Horiot 13b, the sages list specific foods that sharpen the mind and restore what time takes from us. The list is specific. The sages were not speaking loosely. And at the top of the list, olive oil appears, shemen zayit, identified not merely as a food, but as a substance that, in the words of the sages, returns lost wisdom and strengthens the memory. The tractate is discussing people who study Torah, but the principle is physical as well as spiritual. The sages of the Talmud did not separate the body from the mind. They understood what modern neuroscience is only now beginning to confirm, that what you put in your body in the morning sets the entire metabolic and cognitive course of your day. This is one of the 7 sacred foods my grandfather called the divine blueprint of the Jewish kitchen. And the Talmud's testimony about it is not isolated. In the Tractate Menashot, page 85, side B, Menashot 85b, the quality of olive oil is discussed with striking precision. The highest grade, the oil that flows from the olive before pressing, is called the first oil, and the text is explicit that this oil carries the greatest spiritual and physical potency. What the ancient sages were describing 2,000 years ago is what we now call cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil. The first pressing, unheated, unrefined, carrying the full spectrum of polyphenols and antioxidants that researchers at major universities are now studying as potential compounds for extending health span and protecting the brain from neurodegeneration. But I want to teach you what the sages understood, that the researchers are still working to understand. The Zohar, the foundational text of Kabbalah, compiled by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and preserved and illuminated by the great sages of Tzfat, teaches that the olive tree carries a specific spiritual quality called or ganuz, hidden light. The olive is the only fruit in which the light, the oil, is hidden inside the flesh. You have to press it. You have to apply pressure to reveal it. The Zohar connects this to the nature of the human soul. Our deepest vitality is also hidden. It must be cultivated through practice, through pressure, through intention. When you consume the oil of the olive with awareness of what it represents, you are not simply nourishing your cells. You are making a statement about your commitment to draw out the hidden light inside yourself. The Rambam Maimonides, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, the great 12th century physician and Torah scholar, was explicit in his medical writings about the role of olive oil in maintaining health. In the Mishneh Torah, in his laws governing personal conduct, Hilchot Deot, chapter 4, he describes a system of eating in which the quality of what you consume in the morning is of supreme importance, because the morning meal sets the tone for the body's entire function throughout the day. He specifically recommends foods that are light, oily, and easily absorbed by the body in the morning hours. Rambam was a physician treating patients in Egypt, and his observations were grounded in clinical reality. The morning consumption of olive oil was not a ritual invented in a vacuum. It was validated across 1,000 years of Jewish medical practice. Now, let me teach you the 3 principles the Talmud encodes in the morning olive oil practice, because this is what most people miss even when they are told to eat olive oil. It is not only about what you eat. It is about when, how, and with what intention. The first principle is called kadima, which means first or before. The Talmud teaches that the morning moment, the first thing you do with your body after waking, carries disproportionate weight over the rest of the day. The rabbis based this on the structure of temple service in the Beit HaMikdash. Every sacred act of the day began with oil. The first act of the priest in the morning was to tend to the menorah, to ensure the oil was burning. This is not coincidence. The morning is a threshold, and what crosses that threshold first sets the quality of everything that follows. Consuming olive oil before coffee, before bread, before anything else is an act of saying to your body and soul, today we begin with the sacred. Today we begin with light. The second principle is called shiur, which means measure or the proper amount. The sages were specific. This is not about consuming large quantities. The practice that was transmitted in the tradition of Tzfat, as my grandfather taught it, involved a small amount. 1 tablespoon, taken slowly, not rushed. In Hebrew, there is a concept called kavana, which means directed intention or mindfulness. The morning olive oil practice is not something you do while checking your phone or rushing out the door. You take the oil. You hold the cup or the spoon for a moment. You are aware of what you are doing. This is why the practice works differently when practiced with kavana than when practiced mechanically. The body responds to intention. The Zohar is unambiguous on this point. The spiritual dimension of food is activated by the consciousness of the one who consumes it. The third principle is consistency, shmirat, the guarding of the practice across time. The Talmud tractate, Bereshot, page 54, side B, Bereshot E54b, teaches that spiritual protection accumulates through consistent practice, the way wealth accumulates through consistent saving. A single act of wisdom is beautiful. A practice sustained over weeks, months, years. That is where transformation lives. The centenarians I have observed, the men and women who have lived past 100 in communities that maintained these traditions. They did not eat olive oil for a week and move on. They did it every morning for 70 years. The practice became as natural as breathing. But this principle becomes 10 times more powerful when practiced alongside the other 6 sacred foods. Because the Shivat HaMinim were never designed to work in isolation. My grandfather did not teach these 7 foods as separate lessons. He taught them as one system, one code, and the olive oil is one thread in a tapestry that only reveals its full pattern when all 7 threads are woven together. I want to share something with you that I have been holding close for many years. My grandfather was not a wealthy man in the conventional sense, but he lived to 96 with his mind completely intact. He was writing Torah commentary at 94. He was walking to the synagogue every morning at 95. And, in the last year of his life, when I sat with him and asked him what he believed was the single most important factor in his long and clear life, he said this, and I am translating from Hebrew, but I want to capture his exact meaning. Shlomo, the oil of the olive carried the light of the menorah for 1,000 years. What do you think it carries in the body of a man who receives it every morning with gratitude? I have thought about that sentence for 20 years, and I believe he was pointing to something that has no simple scientific name. He was pointing to a relationship between a human being and a sacred food, a relationship built on consistency, on reverence, on the understanding that what we consume is not simply fuel, but covenant. I want to speak briefly about where we are in the world right now, because I think this knowledge is urgent. There is something happening to human cognition across the globe. The rates of neurological disorders, of inflammation, of early cognitive decline are rising in ways that epidemiologists are struggling to explain fully. The food systems of the modern world have drifted so far from the foods that the human body evolved and was designed to consume, and, specifically, from the sacred foods that the Jewish tradition identified thousands of years ago as the architecture of human health. That we are experiencing a kind of spiritual and physical malnutrition that more technology will not solve. My grandfather organized the complete teaching of these 7 sacred foods into a system over the course of his entire life. It took me decades of study to understand how deeply they connect, how each food addresses a different dimension of what it means to be a whole, blessed, and long-lived human being. The olive and its oil address the dimension of light, inner clarity, cognitive sharpness, the preservation of the mind across time. Let me bring this together for you. What you have learned today is this. The Talmud in Tractate Horayot 13b identifies olive oil as a substance that restores and preserves the mind. The Zohar teaches that the oil of the olive carries hidden light that is activated by conscious, intentional consumption. Rambam's medical writings confirm that the morning hours are the most critical time to nourish the body with foods that are easily absorbed and maximally potent. The practice transmitted through the sages of Tzfat, including through my grandfather Reb Yosef Katz, prescribes 1 tablespoon of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil consumed first thing in the morning, before any other food or drink, taken slowly and with kavana, with full, grateful awareness of what you are receiving. This knowledge belongs to you. Whether you are Jewish or not, whether you keep kashrut or have never heard that word before, this wisdom was placed in the sacred text of a tradition that understood the human body and soul in ways that took the modern world 3,000 years to begin to catch up to. You can begin this practice tomorrow morning. 1 tablespoon. First thing, slowly, with gratitude, and I want to say this clearly. This practice comes with responsibility. Use it with good intention. Use it for health, for clarity, for the service of your family and your community. The tradition teaches that when sacred food is received with gratitude, the blessing multiplies. When it is taken for granted, it feeds only the body and misses the soul entirely. The choice of how to receive it is always yours. In my next teaching, I will reveal another of the 7 sacred foods, one that my grandfather said was the most misunderstood food in all of Torah. Scholars have been arguing about it for 2,000 years, and the simple truth of what it does for the human body has been sitting in plain sight in the Talmud the entire time. You will not want to miss that teaching. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do so now, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss it when it is released. If what I shared today touched something in you, please, Modis, write Shivat HaMinim in the comments. That tells me you are part of this community, that this knowledge is reaching the people who are ready for it. Share this video with one person in your life who you believe deserves to know this. And if you received something of value here, like cost you nothing and it helps this teaching reach further than my voice alone can carry it, Shabbat Shalom. Until next time.